A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Councillor Ian Edwards, and I am Chair of the Central and South Planning Committee. Very warm welcome to you all that have come this evening, and also to anybody who may be watching us on our YouTube channel. Details of the business are on the agenda papers, which are at the back of the room, and they're also available online under the live broadcast. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the public, as I've said, this meeting is being videoed and is being streamed live. The cameras are only facing this way, so none of you in the public gallery are visible. However, anybody who comes forward to speak as a petitioner or agent will be captured on screen. And colleagues, it's very important to use the microphone, otherwise your valuable input is not captured by the video. Okay. Bit of business, pre-business discussion. Fire alarms. Not expecting one. So if it does go, it will be for real. We will be evacuating. Fire exits. The way you came in is undoubtedly the best way. Should that exit over there be blocked, there are further exits behind these screens. We are all going to be going with you. We will escort you out. We'll meet back up in the forecourt of the Civic Centre. Mobile telephones. Colleagues, can I ask everybody to make sure their mobile phones are off or to silent? And residents' feedback forms. Members of the public, we do invite your comments. The feedback forms are available on the agenda pack and also available online. They do help us get better. Those comments go to Democratic Services, not to me or the committee itself. So please be frank and open with us. It does, as I say, help us to get better. Okay. Before we get into the agenda, I think I'll just say a little bit about the way the meeting's run. Speaking rights. Although we are meeting in public, it is not a public meeting, and therefore there are no general speaking rights. The only people that can address the committee are those that are set out in the Constitution, which means a petition or the respondent to a petition. Otherwise, we can't have any interruptions, and I must be firm on that. And speaking rights, as you come forward, I will explain the 5 minutes, but it's a 5-minute speaking rule. The meeting is going to be held in two parts, Part 1 and Part 2. Part 1 is the general planning applications. These are the matters of greatest interest to people, and you will hear those discussions in full, and they are streamed. Part 2 are private matters, and these are related to enforcement, where we are considering taking enforcement action, and discussion of that in a public domain is not helpful. So we do break the meeting and ask residents to leave at that point. Should they be interested in watching the full committee, you can't watch Part 2, and we break the video link. Members of the committee this evening, the decision makers, there's a lot of us around the table. The decision makers, the ones that actually vote on a decision, I'll start on my far right-hand side, as I normally do. Councillor Stead, Councillor Ahmed Walana, Councillor Chamdal, Councillor Chapman, Councillor Yarrow. On my far left-hand side, Councillor Duncan, Councillor Dillon, and Councillor East. Now we have quite a big legal team and support team with us this evening. Roisin is with us assisting a new member of staff and learning from Jyoti Mehta, who's giving us legal advice. Kate Balter is our clerk and keeping the minutes and keeping me in line. Alex Kushak also helps keep me in line as our planning service manager and gives me expert advice and constant kicks under the table. Meg Harani is presenting. He will outline each of the applications, but also gives advice. And Syed Shah is our principal highways. I only vote in the event of there being a tie. Very unusual. As I say, the councillors are the decision makers in the forum this evening. Now, we turn very quickly to the agenda bits. The first bits we'll whisk through quickly, and then we'll get into the main bits. Okay, so agenda item 1, apologies for absence.
Yes, apologies for absence are received from Councillor Manjit Katra, who has been substituted by Councillor Beulah East.
Thank you very much. Declarations of interest coming before us tonight. Any new declarations? Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a non-pecuniary interest in item 8, as I live there and I know many of the people involved in this. So I'll be leaving for that item.
Thank you very much for your declaration. Any others, colleagues? Okay. There are no minutes to sign, so that's item 3 done. Item 4, no matters being notified in advance or urgent, so that's that one done. Item 5, it's a bit I talked about earlier, Part 1 and Part 2. And I can confirm there are businesses in both Part 1 and Part 2. As I say, we will break at the end of Part 1. So that's very quickly through the first 5 items. I don't think we'll get through the next 5 quite as quickly. So we'll now turn to agenda item 6, the main start of our main part of the business, which is number 12, Beacon Close, Uxbridge. Mr. Harani.
Thank you, Chairman. 12 Beacon Close is a 2-storey detached property situated on the west side of the road and is situated on a road which slopes with the adjoining property number 10 at a higher level and number 14 at a lower level. This application is for a part single, part 2-storey rear extension. 16 letters and a petition have been received, and the details of the consultation replies are set out on page 2 of the agenda. The main issues for members to consider are the impact on the character and appearance of the property and the impact on adjoining occupiers. In terms of the character and appearance, the proposed extension will be in line with the flank walls of the existing building and will project 4 metres at first floor level and 5.9 metres at ground floor from the rear elevation of the original dwelling. The 2-storey element would have a double hip roof which would be set below the ridge height of the main dwelling. The Council's supplementary planning document, H-Residential Extensions, recommends that for a detached house, 2-storey extensions of up to 4 metres deep are normally acceptable. The proposed extension is within this requirement, and its design and appearance is considered to be complementary to the existing dwelling. The single-storey element would exceed the maximum specified in the Council's supplementary planning document. However, the SPD also states that a deeper extension could be permitted where the proposed rear extension would not have any adverse impact on the light and outlook at adjacent properties and would not appear dominating and obtrusive. I'll discuss these issues in the impact on adjoining occupiers later. However, in terms of its design and appearance, given the substantial size of the plot and the siting of the extension to the rear, the proposed extension would not appear prominent and would not be considered out of character with the property. In relation to the impact on adjoining occupiers, the SPD states that rear extensions will only be allowed where there is no significant overdominance, overshadowing, loss of outlook and loss of daylight, and recommends that the first floor should not extend beyond a 45-degree angle when measured from the midpoint of the nearest habitable room window on the adjoining properties. In this case, the proposed extension would not extend beyond a 45-degree angle when measured from the nearest windows on the adjoining properties. Furthermore, number 14 Beacon Close has a single-storey garage which extends out at an angle, and the proposed extension would not protrude beyond this. The property at number 10 is sited such that it is angled away from number 12 and maintains a separation distance of some 7 metres from the proposed extension. The proposed extension is not therefore considered to be harmful to the amenities of the adjoining occupiers. Whilst it's accepted that the depth of the extension, particularly at ground floor level, exceeds the Council's normal standards, the size of the extension is not considered to cause significant harm to the occupiers of the adjoining dwellings, and its design is considered to be acceptable such that a refusal cannot be justified. Given this, the application is recommended for approval. If I can just go through the plans again. This shows the existing property and the first floor and the elevations, and then the brown parts here is the extension at ground floor level, and then that's the extension at first floor level. And the elevations as proposed. See the elevation, the rear elevation. At this point the roof is set below the ridge of the main roof, and the middle element is set in, as you can see from the roof plan here, so that you get a break between the two larger elements. In terms of the impact, if I can just go back to the this plan, you'll see that the adjoining property has a single-storey element here, and the extension doesn't protrude beyond that. And then the distance between the property here and the extension there. So in terms of the impact on adjoining occupiers, we're satisfied that the distances and the existence of extensions on adjoining properties is such that it would not have an impact. These are just photographs of the property. This is just looking towards the property. This is the actual property. And then to the rear, and you'll see that it's slightly elevated back to front as well as side to side. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to mention, you may have mentioned it and I might have missed it, but the plans that were circulated initially with our papers were a slightly older version. The newer versions have been circulated, and the ones that were shown on screen. I just want you to be completely aware of that. I'm not absolutely clear on how they differ, because I believe you may all have been looking at the plans in front of you when reaching a decision, and I want you to be clear if there have been any changes in a revision and a plan. If there's anything significant, I want to see it, please. Could you let us know how they change?
Yeah, the main changes in the design of the rear, so that where you had the first floor extension, that went all the way across, in essence, there with a very small gap in between, and the roof plan meant that those two ridges that you see here and here were in essence almost touching, and now what you get is you get a change so that these are set further down the roof, and this element has been introduced so that the gap is wider at that point.
Okay, colleagues, everybody at this point clear? Okay, thank you very much. We have received a petition on this matter. Is the organiser of the petition, Ms Kirsty Pargeter here and wish to speak? No? Let's move on then. Either the applicant, Mrs Thind, or the agent, Mr Smith, present and wish to speak? Thank you. If you'd like to come forward. Okay, when we come to addressing the committee, the speaking rights for petitioners and the applicant agent in response is 5 minutes. Please make yourself comfortable. It is timed and it's by lights. You will have 4 minutes of a green light and 1 minute of amber. And when it goes to red, I must draw you to a close. It's important that you toggle on and off the microphone. If we leave that on, we get bad feedback as well. So if I could ask you when you finish speaking, to make sure that that's turned off. And at the end, you may or may not be asked questions by members of the committee. If you aren't, it doesn't mean that they're not interested. It means we've read it and there's no new information needed. Okay. So at your convenience, when you start, we will start the time. Thank you.
Good evening. Following the recent submission of this planning application and the subsequent complaints that have been made, we wish to clarify the facts and dispel any concerns to both the committee and the neighbouring homeowners. We are aware that there is a civil complaint regarding the tenant residing in the property currently. We are currently liaising with Noel Kelly, the Principal Planning Enforcement Officer, regarding the matter. My client is also aware of the dispute between the tenant and the opposing neighbour, and have come to the decision that it is in the best interest of the neighbouring community that they do not renew the tenancy agreement in March 2017. If there is any breach of the current agreement, they would also strongly consider terminating the contract with the tenant immediately. Mr and Mrs Thind are not using this property currently and not using it as a hotel or a HMO. The sole purpose of gaining this planning permission is to enable them to extend the home for their family to move into. The current tenants were only placed temporarily in order for them to consolidate finances for the property extensions and the renovation. They would like to increase the size of the house to accommodate and improve the quality of life for their young family and for their mother, who has a physical disability. They aim to move into the property when the extension and renovation works are completed. Size and character. The extensions proposed at number 12 Beacon Close will be keeping with the number of local properties in terms of scale, and the increased size of the dwelling will be in proportion to the plot size and the fact that the property is fully detached with expansive distance to the plot boundaries. The Hillingdon Planning Department are happy with the size of the extensions and have recommended the design for approval. With regards to the character, the extended sections will match the materials, style and form of the existing dwelling. Aside from this, the extensions to the rear are virtually impossible to see from the street scene from both ways along Beacon Close. The images provided within the design and access statement clarify this. This point also clarifies any concerns regarding visual impact. HMO and number of occupants. The house is not currently a HMO, it is tenanted. This has been clarified by Hillingdon Planning following a recent visit to the property. The property was purchased earlier this year, and the new owners intend to occupy the property as a family once the works have been completed. The existing tenants are due to be removed when works are undertaken to construct the extensions. The design clearly shows the works at ground floor to provide ample living areas, a kitchen, utility room and a bedroom with ensuite. This bedroom and ensuite at ground floor is for my client's physically disabled mother, who is moving in with her family as she approaches her care years. The extension at first floor level to the rear will allow the reconfiguration of the floor to provide 4 double bedrooms, a family-sized bathroom, ensuite with dressing area to the master bedroom and a study. The layout and proportions are typical of a well-sized family home and is typical within the area. Number and flow of vehicles. When the existing tenants are no longer inhabiting the property, the number of cars will reduce significantly. All of the current tenants have their own vehicle. It is likely that there will only be 2 or 3 vehicles needed for the young family when they occupy the dwelling. The driveway will accommodate these vehicles so that there will be no need for additional on-street parking. The traffic will be of typical working hours. During construction works, the large driveway will also accommodate all workers' vehicles and any skips required for spoil disposal. Side elevation vents. The side elevation vent for both kitchen areas will be 3.7 metres away from the boundary of the adjoining property. This boundary has a sheer brick wall and the nearest operable window is over 10 metres away. The clearance distance is more than adequate for the discharge of any kitchen extract. Refuge and recycling. The new occupants will be storing waste and recycle bins within the existing garage area and as such will have no impact upon the neighbouring dwellings or the street scene. Planning considerations. Following discussions with Hillingdon Planning Department throughout the planning process, we've amended the scheme to comply with the policies set out by Hillingdon Council. This has resulted in the proposal being recommended for approval. The design mitigates any overlooking, loss of outlook or daylight, meets the 45-degree angle ruling and appears subordinate to the original dwelling. The design and materials will act harmoniously with the existing and will not detrimentally affect the street scene or the visual amenities of the neighbouring dwellings. At this point, I'd like to point out that the extension has also been reduced in width by 300mm on either side as well, in addition to the works. The change that we made at the first floor to bring it in slightly so that it appears subordinate to the main dwelling. In conclusion, the proposal has taken into account the policies and the guidance set out by Hillingdon Council and has met these completely as indicated by the recommendation for approval. The existing tenants, of which any complaints have been largely about, are to be removed from the property, and the new owner of the property is to occupy the dwelling. Didn't see the yellow light.
Sorry, I believe you were there, and some of the matters that you may have been alluding to towards the end are not relevant for this committee anyway. We only consider the planning application on the merits of the actual plans and within planning law, so the other matters have been dealt with elsewhere. Colleagues, are there any questions at all of Mr. Smith clarity? Thank you very much, sir. If I can invite you to return to your seat. And
if I may, can we just make one small correction that's come to light on the plan numbers on the condition?
Okay.
So, in a small change to the officer's recommendation, we would just seek to get delegated authority and head of planning to update the plan numbers which are on condition 2 on page number 5 of the report before you. Just whilst the presenter was submitting their comments to you, we noticed there was corrections needed to be made to those plan numbers. We just need to update our recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. It's understandable with different plans coming before us at the last moment. And it is helpful to note we have an additional change, which is the set-in of 300 mil. You can see on the roof plan there, you can see the extensions to the ground and first floor are set in by 300 each side, whereas on the plan packs before us they weren't. So this is very marginally smaller and different roof form to the rear. Okay, Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. I don't appear to have the proposed ground floor in my set of plans. I don't know about other members. We've got existing, and we've got existing and proposed first.
You're absolutely right. I did draw this to officers' attention earlier in the week. I am informed that they were circulated by email, although I haven't yet seen them myself. I can't always access my emails immediately. However, the plans that are on the screen are the actual and proper plans. It should be sufficient for us to be able to look at them, unless you have any substantive issue with the layout as shown on the plan.
I'm happy with that as long as it's kept there. I had difficulties with my computer and it wasn't returned to me until yesterday. So unfortunately, I apologise about that. But
no apology needed. It's not our responsibility to do that.
Been sent out, and it is the plans that we approve. So I think that we at least need to see them before we make a decision about them. Thanks.
If I can just intervene. The layout of the ground floor is such that you've got sort of kitchen, dining area, sitting area to the rear. The additional bedroom that the speaker was referring to is in the original dwelling, and it's a conversion of an existing room.
So can I just ask, while that plan is there, where the kitchen vent is that was referred to in the agent's presentation, please?
The cooking areas is in this position here, so I think that's the cooker there, so it will vent out in.
Councillor Dunn.
Thank you, Chair. Whilst there's no current overlooking at the moment, the gradient is slightly downhill, isn't it? So as they walk out of the extension, those are lovely bifolds, do they walk straight down steps, or? It's just what I've seen previously with other extensions is they build a patio outside it, and that can then cause an overlooking issue.
This is the current situation, and so they extend out. Anything over 300 millimetres as a decking area or patio area needs planning permission. So if they go above that, then they require permission to do so. Steps out wouldn't require permission.
Councillor Token?
I think the point that possibly, my colleague raises here is that the existing patio may not overlook, but it slopes down. You're now building out over that. So where is the new patio, if you like? Is it at this level? Because there's a considerable drop. Or is it, at what level is it, in fact? That's what I'm asking.
It's because the land slopes down, it'll be at a lower level than the existing one. So, but if members are concerned with that, we can add an informative to say that anything above 300 millimetres will need planning permission and, will be considered on its merits.
Thank you for that. But I think it wasn't just that it slopes down that way, but that the whole road slopes down. So it may be, and this is, I think, where we've seen this before, it's not affecting one side of the properties adjoining, but it may, quite seriously affect the other side. So if that can be taken into account, I think we'd appreciate that.
Thank you, that'd be helpful. Could we just return to the ground floor plan again for my benefit? I wasn't alert enough to look at the There's no patio shown.
There isn't a patio shown, and as I say, anything above 300 mil,
Okay.
they'll need permission, so we can add an informative
Fine.
to say that.
Fine. Okay. That's absolutely clear. Presently no patio, so there isn't an issue. That's
Yeah, thank you, Chair, but this is what I was querying. There is something shown here, I mean, in relation to this building, but it's not clear, really. It needs to be clarified, that's what I'm saying.
So maybe I can, if I can come in at this point. So the two steps we look at is what is the description of development before you, and what do the plans show. So on the first test, the description of development does not include any reference to a patio being provided for under this application. And looking at the plans before you, there is the ground level shown. If I can have the pointer, sorry, Meg. So we can see here the outline of the garage, the existing garage, which is to the side of the property, which protrudes past it to the back. And then this is the outline of the gradient, the land level that goes down. The only other thing I'll just clarify is when we talk about 300 millimetres, the rules are you can't extend 300 millimetres beyond unmade ground level. So if the land slopes like this and they want to put up a patio, the patio at any point cannot be more than 300 millimetres above the unmade ground level. And what we're suggesting as officers is we can impose an informative and any decision that's made to make that very clear to the applicant so they know they're not getting any consent for a patio as part of this proposal.
Exactly, thank you, because obviously people are not going to have a patio that does this. They'd be rolling down it all the time. So, you know.
Thank you. Good points well made. Thank you very much. Any other issues, colleagues? Councillor Slade.
Thank you, Chairman. There's mention about a suspicion that this is going to be an HMO, and there's another statement saying that the owners say it's for family use only and they wouldn't be using it as an HMO. Is there any way that we can actually say that they can't have an HMO on this building?
Pass it over to Councillor Cruikshank. Alex Cruikshank, sorry. you might consider it.
Thank you. So to impose any restriction or condition on an application, we need to be able to demonstrate as a local planning authority that the application before you would be unacceptable unless that restriction was in place. The application as set out is for the extension to a family dwelling, a C3 family dwelling, and there's nothing in the application which indicates any proposed change of use from this house to a house of multiple occupation. Reference has been made several times by the petitioner to an ongoing enforcement investigation this council has, and I can advise that at this moment in time the best information that we have is that the house currently is not in use as a house of multiple occupation. The difficulty we would have in imposing such restriction is I cannot see planning reasoning in this instance for that restriction to be imposed. We have, as a council, imposed an Article 4 directive in Brunel Ward where we have evidence of there being a significant problem because of the number of HMOs that are coming forward. This location is outside of that ward. We do not have the evidence to show that this is a common problem in this area. This is a large detached property with off-road parking to the front, separated from neighbouring residential dwellings, and therefore my recommendation to you is I cannot see a planning justification for imposing a restrictive planning condition on a change of use to HMO. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. I believe we'll probably test that a little bit. Councillor Yarrow.
Thank you, Chairman. I was concerned about the potential use of this being for an HMO. I think my fears have been removed to a certain degree by listening to what the agent had to say, that it is going to be for a family use, and that there is the reason for wanting an extra room is that there's some aged lady who needs perhaps more care and attention than she would get if she wasn't living actually at home. A lot of the a lot of the problems that were mentioned by the objectors are nothing to do with planning. They certainly concerned them, and it was certainly revealing, listening to what the agent had to say, that I wasn't aware that there'd been lots of problems with the present people who were living in the house, and that it's going as far as possibly enforcement. So I think all that's going to be put to bed by when the new owners take over this property and actually use it as a dwelling place and not as an HMO. I think the absence of any petitioner here to put their case also leads me to believe that there is absolutely nothing really wrong with this application going ahead. And consequently, I would like to move now that we accept the officer's recommendations and accept this application.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dillon. Councillor Duncan, deferred.
Sure. Well, I have pretty much no problem with this application either, but just one question on PD rights. Have existing PD rights been used, and if not, seeing as it's quite a large development, are we able to remove PD rights so it doesn't become an even bigger property?
In terms of extending property, the current extensions would remove PD rights for extensions, as it were. They may still have some PD rights for roof extensions, which you're allowed up to 50 cubic metres, but that would include the roofs that are being proposed on the existing proposed extension. So if they were to increase the roof size, it would be fairly small, because the roofs that are proposed would probably be about 20-25 cubic metres already.
Councillor Duncan?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask, I know that this plot is at an angle on the curve, and so the adjoining properties it's on a splay a little further away, but are there any windows in the side elevations of the adjoining properties, please?
On the first floor of that property, which is number 10, I think, or 14, sorry. And as I say, the other one is splayed out. If normally in the general design of these properties is that they have either a hall or a circulation space, and not anything else with a window on the side elevation.
Okay. It's been formally proposed by Councillor Yarris. Seconded by Councillor. Thank you very much, Councillor Dillon. Show of hands, please.
Sorry, just to clarify, it's for the additional informative and delegated authority for condition 2.
Absolutely. To be absolutely clear, it's for the additional informative delegated authority to amend the listed plans, and we're talking about the plans that were shown on the slides, not the ones in your back. Okay. Okay. Show of hands, please, everybody. That is unanimously agreed. Thank you. Application is approved. We now move to agenda item 7. Sorry, before we start with the presentation, we have a confidential note that has been provided for us that sets out personal circumstance in support of this application. We will just very quickly hand it out to committee members. It is only very brief, less than half a side. I would remind everybody that should there be a need to discuss matters of personal health that we would need to go into part 2. I don't think we will need to get into that field, but I would ask all members to be very circumspect on any discussion about this particular submission being placed before you now. Okay, everybody. Mr. Harani, if you'd present this one, please, for us.
Thank you, Chairman. 203 Park Road is a two-storey detached property situated on the west side of the road, close to its junction with Belmont Road. The proposal is for the erection of a single-storey detached outbuilding. It is the subject of 2 letters and a petition in support. The main issues for members to consider are the impact on the character of the existing property and the proposed use of the outbuilding. In terms of its impact, the existing and surrounding properties, the outbuilding is sited within the rearmost part of the site. However, it has a substantial footprint of some 46 square metres and a height of 3.7 metres. Such a size is uncharacteristic of an outbuilding and not considered to be a subordinate structure. The outbuilding would be readily visible from the rear gardens of surrounding dwellings, and therefore is considered to be an incongruous addition to the residential environment. In terms of its use, the Council's supplementary planning document, Residential Extensions, makes clear that outbuildings should not be used as a self-contained residential unit. And whilst it's noted that the applicant confirms that this proposal is not for a self-contained unit, its internal facilities, including a bedroom, bathroom and living room, its substantial size, and the availability of independent access to it from the front of the site, meaning that you wouldn't have to go through the main dwelling, means that the proposed outbuilding is considered to be easily capable of independent occupation from the main dwelling, and is thus tantamount to a separate dwelling in a position where such a dwelling would not be accepted. For these reasons, the application is recommended for refusal. If I can just go through the plans. The outbuilding is this position here, and that's the proposed layout. So you can see the living room, bedroom, bathroom. And this is, so it's going to be sited in this position here. That's just the adjoining property on Belmont. And this is the site of the actual building. And then looking towards the properties themselves, that's the application property and the adjoining on Park Road. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Before we move to the petition, could you just go back to the site plan and comment on what appears to be a rear access? Please, Mr. Ronnie.
Thank you, Chairman. I think what you would be referring to is this, which is possibly a pedestrian access. I did have a look at that, and there is a gate to the front here. It does have a hazard sign on it, so my guess is that it probably serves an old substation of some sort.
No general public access is what we're saying. Thank you. Okay, we have a petition in support by Mr. Chris Moore. Is Mr. Chris Moore present? Thank you very much. If you'd like to come forward. And are you the same Chris Moore, the agent? I think that, to be in complete fairness, we will limit you then to just 5 minutes in total, rather than 5 minutes as a petitioner and a further 5 minutes as a respondent. Okay, so just 5 minutes, please. 4 with the green and 1 with the amber. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, councillors, ladies and gentlemen. I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant for the proposal in front of you this evening for the ancillary annex at 203 Park Road. I understand that there are concerns in regards to the use and the size of the outbuilding and its impact on character on the street. Firstly, I'd like to address the use. May I assure you that the annex is fully proposed for ancillary accommodation, and it is for the applicant's unwell elderly grandparents who require the support of the wider family. The annex should be viewed as an extension in terms of accommodation to the host dwelling. I believe the strong family tie between the host dwelling and the annex confirms the applicant's intentions. The need for suitable accommodation of elderly residents is a pressure felt not only nationally but also in Hillingdon. Paragraph 7.23 of the Hillingdon UDP states, and I quote, The council's own housing stock contains many elderly households currently under-occupying family-sized dwellings and wishing to move into accommodation better suited to their needs, end quote. As a result, granny annexes are becoming a desirable solution for many local authorities, not only in London but nationally, to address this need. Whilst a modest living space, bedroom and bathroom are proposed, we are not proposing a kitchen and any laundry facilities. Therefore, the grandparents would be reliant on the main house continually throughout the day to undertake cooking and cleaning for their clothes. The annex would be reasonably close to the main dwelling and would share an overlook of the garden. In regards to access, the grandparents would enter through the main house. There's a restrictive side access to the side of the property. However, this is an undesirable form of access, and nonetheless, the occupants would still need to enter through the private garden of the main dwelling and over the curtilage of the existing house. We are not proposing a separate curtilage as what would be expected of a C3 dwelling. I acknowledge that the case officer still maintains concerns about its use. Therefore, as a way to ensure its control, we have proposed a planning condition to ensure that it remains in an ancillary form. This is a condition which has been regularly used by planning inspectors at appeal and has also been used by Hillingdon's committee in September 2015 for another annex approved on Churchill Avenue. The annex would also therefore remain control, and therefore, if it were ever used as an independent form, enforcement teams could take action to ensure that the ancillary use would be returned. I'd like to now turn to the proposed size of the annex. The case officer has outlined concerns that this would have an impact on local character. And that it would be readily visible from the rear gardens and surrounding dwellings, and therefore is considered an incongruous addition to the residential environment. Firstly, the main dwelling is a two-storey dwelling detached with a footprint of approximately 105 square metres. In comparison, the annex is a single-storey, modest-sized outbuilding with a footprint of approximately 46 square metres. Therefore, as you can probably tell, it is under half the size of the existing dwelling. Furthermore, such a footprint could be permitted under permitted development rights for an outbuilding. I obviously am aware that the use is not, but the size is. Therefore, this is an addition which could be added without planning permission to any neighbouring garden within the area, and therefore forms a key characteristic of residential gardens in general, and therefore could be simply introduced to further properties along Park Road. The boundary of the garden is also well defined through domestic fencing and vegetation and trees, as you've seen from the images. Therefore, overlooking at neighbours is unlikely, and furthermore, the distance between the annex and surrounding neighbouring windows is approximately 20 metres, the closest window being 18 metres. This, according to the Built Research Establishment, is a suitable distance for privacy between two-storey and single-storey dwellings, and therefore is considered suitable. I conclude and hope that the points raised will help address the concerns and shows that the proposed annex will provide a modest addition to the rear garden of 203 Park Road, and is also the much-needed accommodation of the applicant's elderly parents who desperately need the help of the applicant. I'd ask you to consider this proposal favourably, and I'm happy to answer any outstanding questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, any questions at all, clarifications? Councillor Stead?
Thank you, Chairman. Does the existing main property already have an extension?
No, it does not.
Sorry, my apologies. Could you ask again that?
I'll try it word for word, Chairman. Does the existing main dwelling have an extension built already?
No, it doesn't.
Thank you, Councillor Yarrow.
I think you've asked the same question that I was going to ask, but can I add, what led you to decide to build it at the bottom of the garden rather than adjoining the back of the house?
It's in regards to two matters. One is the personal need. Because of the illnesses, as you've seen in the confidential document passed around, the applicant would like to avoid, would like to ensure there's privacy between the grandparents and also his young children. The other matter is also that we felt that the position of the annex at the rear of the garden was taking advantage of that existing vegetation and trees and the domestic fencing to ensure privacy to not only the occupants of the annex but surrounding dwellings.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan?
Could you tell me the size of the bathroom, please?
Unfortunately, I don't have the specifications in front of me, but I'm sure from the plans showing it's only going to have a small shower, sink and toilet.
It's just that if one of the grandparents is disabled, is this large enough for a wheelchair accessible, someone who is dependent on a wheelchair?
It's a good question. As far as I'm aware, it is, but I believe that's to do with internal building regs, and we're happy to make amendments if necessary to beforehand through a condition of some sort.
Okay, thank you. Any other further questions? Thank you very much, sir. I invite you to return to your seat. I just have one question. The petitioner commented that this property could be built of this size under permitted development rights. Could you please comment on that, Mr. Cruchot?
So if I refer you to the plans on page 119 of your plans pack, which is on the screen there handily, it shows the height of the building to be 3.7 metres. Permitted development allows for a building up to 4 metres, but only where it is separated from all boundaries by 2 metres. So in this instance, because the proposed structure is close to the boundary, it would not be permitted development because it exceeds 2.5 metres. If it were moved away, then it would fall within the remit of permitted development. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that clarification. Colleagues. Councillor Duncan.
The agent referred to the development that we approved in Churchill Avenue in Hillingdon not so very long ago, earlier this year, I think, when there were very similar circumstances. I wonder if officers could comment on the differences between that application, which we did approve with a special condition, and this, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It was at the very end of last year. Sorry. But I do recall it, and that there are a couple of differences as I recall, and I have to look at the plans again, but I think the building was substantially smaller, but also it didn't include a living room as part of the proposal. It was a bedroom stroke sitting area of a size that's shown as a bedroom in this particular case, or as a living room in this particular case, sorry.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Chair. Have you had consultation with the applicant on the ridge height, and if we can amend that?
We haven't. This is an application for planning permission as opposed to an application for a lawful development certificate. So in terms of the ridge height, they can apply for any height they wish, but if they were to apply for lawful development to say whether they needed permission or not, then they'd have to reduce it to 2.5 metres.
Cameron, please.
And in your opinion, could we achieve the space and the layout with the 2.5 height?
The actual size of the building, clearly they could achieve with a 2.5 metre height, and the headroom would still be sufficient. Clearly the use of the building is different.
Colleagues, any other issues, questions? These are challenging testing issues for us. I do recognise the need and desire for elderly family to be looked after by their closer family. I respect that. We're also aware, though, of the numerous instances of abuse that's happened on that. These are not straightforward. Councillor Duncan.
My personal view is that we're going to have many more of these applications. At the moment we don't have a policy, and I know we can't make policy on the hoof. It's something that has to be looked at thoroughly, and we need to take advice about it. But quite frankly, if this is something that would be permitted development, if it was just 2 metres away. Also, I take the advice from the officer that this is larger than the one that we permitted in Churchill Avenue, but then the whole plot is larger. That was a end of terrace or semi-detached property, I believe. This is a detached, it's wider. I also saw from the photographs that there's quite a lot of mature vegetation, which also gives screening. And my own view is that if somebody wants to take a family member in to care for them, and let's face it, all of us may be in that position at some point in our lives, planning needs to be able to respond to those kind of needs within society without prejudicing, living conditions and the environment for everybody else. And in this, I'm looking, and I don't really see anything that's going to prejudice, other users, residents in the area. This could be an outbuilding where somebody with, two lively teenagers who want to form a pop group and have got a drum set and a guitar can go down the bottom of the garden and use it as a music room with impunity, with neighbours praying for a bit of peace and quiet occasionally. So to have two elderly grandparents living there, I personally don't have a problem with it, and I would be quite happy to approve it. Let me put it that way.
Thank you. That has been quite helpful. Councillor Yarrow, then I'll come to Councillor Dillon. Councillor Stead.
Thank you, Chairman. I couldn't agree more with what you said, Councillor Duncan. I mean, we're playing with very small numbers here, and if it was moved 2 metres away from the fence, yes, it would become permitted development, and there'd be no need. But a change here, a change there, and we could approve it. I mean, there is absolutely no real reason why we should reject it at this moment in time. I think you have to look a little bit outside the box now. That we might be frowned upon for thinking like that, but you're quite right in that we're going to get more and more of these, as if you listen to the news tonight, the care of the elderly is under tremendous scrutiny at the moment. And it's not nothing to do with sitting in a planning committee. However, we have to take cognizance of the fact. So I'm certainly quite prepared to second your motion that we allow it to be built.
I didn't hear Councillor Duncan formally, but before we do, I would just like a little bit of discussion further. Some other people have indicated a desire to speak. Councillor Dillon wished to, and then Councillor Stead.
My only reservation was the height. I'm fine with the layout. I think the need and the requirement is fine. We've approved something in the past very similar because of the need. I have absolutely no problem with it. And especially if you can build it with 2 metres either side when permitted development, this is closer to the edge and further away and less intrusive. There's no problem with it. I think it's fine. And I've just bought my son a drum kit, so
There you are.
and it's in the rear outbuilding, so I'm happy.
I do get the feeling of the room here. However, before we move too quickly on, I would just like to think about height and the closeness to the fence and the impact on the neighbour. The reason of having the 2 metre inset is, I would presume, to protect the residential amenity next door. We're going against that. I'm mindful of the photograph here, and we got some quite mature screening there. I would like to know the impact of this, whether we're protecting that, before we were to go too much further down that road. But I hear where we're coming from. Councillor Stead, you wish to come in.
Thank you, Chairman. Excuse me. When we had the discussions of the last ones that we had about these applications with a granny building in the garden, it's very easy to get emotional about it all, and not sort of put your practical hat on. They mentioned that there was no policy. They're actually quoting a policy in the agenda, so I'm not sure we haven't got a policy, or we have. Also, the reason I asked about, has the main house already got an extension to it? There was a reason for me asking that question, so that I don't feel quite so bad. when I support or maybe support the officer's recommendations. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Chamdale.
Thank you, Chair. I want to really echo Councillor Stead's comments. When I first read it, first thing I looked for was there was a re-entrance that somebody could come in and out of, because it is a large building. In relatively to the house, it's another half size. But at the same time, we do have rules. Bringing it in by 2 metres, would it cause an issue? Would the applicant change it to, say, allowed under PD rights? Would it make much of an issue? I don't think so, because it's a rather large garden anyway. So I think we have to balance that on both sides, be fearful of really taking consideration of what they're asking for. We can understand, we've got the confidential document there, we're all human beings, and we do understand it, as Janet said. We get, a lot of us at that age nearly. But at the end of the day, we do have rules, and we should build to the rules.
Thank you very much. Nobody else indicating to speak. Difficult to pull together. My concern is around the position and its height relative to the neighbouring impact. I'm not clear on whether or not that mature screening stands. What happens to that? It possibly within the build area, certainly the root area might be. So whether this is an issue about exactly as it is on the plan that we have to approve, which is where it's sited in the garden as well as site, I'm not convinced that this is the best location because of the impact on the neighbouring property at 205. But I will happily take guidance from Mr. Krushak.
Thank you. So, obviously, the recommendation before you is for refusal. If I make one comment first, and then I come on to the point of possible conditions. When we're talking about the height of the building and the fallback position that was put forward by the agent speaking on behalf of the petitioner, that goes to the heart of reason for refusal number 1 set out on page 14. Do you agree with us as officers that introducing this feature into the rear garden would be visually discordant and have an impact on the character and appearance in the area? So that addresses that point specifically. The second point is about the level of facilities within the building. And whilst you might be able to provide a building of a similar size and similar height if it was moved further away from the boundary, you can't provide those facilities under permitted development. That's why the application is before you. So moving on to the issue of, if you were minded as a committee to approve the application this evening, our strong guidance as officers would be that you would want to have restrictive conditions in place to make sure that the building that you're approving is used as you anticipate, as is set out before you, and that can be achieved through a restrictive condition. What is more difficult is to give you any certainty as to what would happen to the vegetation and trees that are shown against the boundary there. If we are to impose a condition on an application, there has to be a reasonable prospect that it can be met. The plans before you, if I refer to the layout plan on page 118, there's no trees shown on that boundary, therefore we do not know whether the trees have been taken into account with the positioning of the building. It's my view, looking that it's only half a metre away from the boundary, that it's very likely that to safeguard those trees, if that is something you want to do, that the building would have to be repositioned. My suggested solution, I'm afraid, is if you are minded to overturn the officer's recommendation, you might wish to defer this item to allow for amended plans to come forward to give you clarity. That would allow, if necessary, the applicant to reposition the building to make sure those other features can be accommodated. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. That was helpful, and I see some nods. Councillor Dillon.
Alice, I was just about to say that. Believe it or not. If we could defer the item so that everybody's happy with the fresh application or fresh plan, that would be helpful to all, I think.
Councillor Duncan?
I think it does show on the plan that the foundations, it's a raft foundation, and and it's quite true. We don't know. I mean, clearly that is a major amenity, the tree shown there. We do not want to compromise that. So I would be happy to move that it be deferred for consideration for approval by us, providing this can be located and safeguards about the trees and other mature vegetation be secured, if that's possible.
Thank you. I'm mindful of the fact that, to my knowledge, there's no preservation orders on it. So, what I'm mindful of is the height of this new building, as the officer pointed out, is quite impactful to neighbours. At the moment, is lessened by that mature screening. If that's lost by its build, then we have some detriment that the officers have clearly pointed out and are recommending refusal on that ground. If, though, it can be positioned in such a way that it's screened, and we have satisfaction to that, then for me it seems as though the energy in the room is towards supporting this application, but it needs to be deferred to allow some further site work to be done and new plans drawn that position it in a way that protects the screening or limits the impact on the neighbour, the immediate neighbour, of this building of this height on their boundary.
And possibly reduce it in height, if that's possible too, if they're going to make those amendments.
Well, that is a suggestion. I mean, the issue is about reducing the impact on the neighbour, immediate neighbour, and that needs to be looked at in a way that would enable us then to move in a way that supports the family. So we've had a proposal and a seconder that is deferred. Can we have a show of hands, please, for the deferring of that? Thank you very much. Mr. Moore, did you understand what we're about? Thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you. And I am duty-bound to remind you that speaking rights, that the next time you need to submit a new petition if you feel the need to address the committee again. Thank you. We're now moving on to agenda item 8. Councillor Duncan, we just allow Councillor Duncan to leave the room, and then Mr. Harani.
Thank you, Chairman. 45 Fraser Avenue is a detached bungalow situated on the east side of the road. The site lies within the Garden City West Drayton area of special local character. The proposal involves the demolition of the existing property and the erection of a 2-storey 4-bedroom detached dwelling. The application is the subject of 3 letters and a petition, and the details of the consultation replies are set out on page 25 of the agenda. The main issues to be considered are the impact on the character and visual amenities of the street and the impact on the amenities of adjoining properties. In terms of the street scene, the current property is sited so that it is significantly forward of the adjoining properties at 43 and 47, but is more intimate in scale to compensate for this. The proposed dwelling would involve an increased scale over the existing property and thus would be more dominant within the street scene. However, to compensate for this increase in scale, it has been set back significantly to be in line with the front of the neighbouring property at number 47. I can just go to the layout plan. That's the existing property. It is a bungalow, therefore more intimate and smaller in scale than the adjoining properties, and that's the siting of the new property. It's been set back to be in line with number 47 here, but is still forward of the adjoining property there. At the moment it's sited considerably further forward along this line here. In terms of its overall height, the height of the new building would not exceed the height of the adjacent property at number 47, and sufficient separation distance would be retained to each of the side boundaries to reflect the spacing of the development within the locality. The design of the proposed dwelling is traditional with a hip roof and brick and render finish, although there are some contemporary elements within, such as the inset dormers. The The visual impact of the contemporary elements overall is minimal, and given the variety of designs and scale of development within the street, it's considered that the proposal would not have a negative impact on the visual amenity of the street scene or the surrounding West Drayton area special local character. I can just go through to the elevations. You'll see that the height of the building has been raised. The eaves height is now considerably higher than it was. This is the adjoining property, which is a chalet style bungalow. The ridge heights are the same for both properties. Obviously the eaves height for the proposed property is higher than both the adjoining properties. If I turn to the impact on the amenities of adjoining properties, the property would be in close proximity to the side dormer windows found on the neighbouring property at 47. However, these windows are either obscure glazed and serve non-habitable rooms, or are secondary windows, and thus the impact on these is considered acceptable. Siting of the dwelling and its projection beyond the rear of the adjoining properties is such that it would not breach a 45-degree angle from habitable room windows of both adjacent properties. Both adjoining properties are extended at ground floor level such that the rear projection beyond these properties would not exceed 4 metres, and allied to the gap between the proposed dwelling and the adjacent properties, the proposal would not unduly impact on the amenities of these adjoining properties in terms of over-dominance, overshadowing, visual intrusion, loss of light or loss of outlook. In conclusion, the proposal is designed to ensure it is in character with the area and to ensure that it does not have an adverse impact on adjoining occupiers. On this basis, the application is recommended for approval. If I can just go through the rest of the plans. That shows the existing layout, and that's the existing property, adjoining property at number 47, the dormer windows I was referring to. As you can see, there is a number of designs of properties in the street. There's a 2-storey traditional chalet bungalow, bungalow with dormers, and a traditional bungalow as well. So there is a variety up and down the street, and there's another one, the Dutch style gable fronted bungalow. These are views from the front, and then the side elevation, and again the windows, the dormer on the adjoining properties. And this is further along the street. There's no addendum sheet, so thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. We do have a petition on this matter. Mr. Malcolm Thompson, if you wish to speak, if you'd like to come forward, please, sir. Make yourself comfortable. 5 minutes speaking rights, 4 minutes with the green light, 1 with the amber. Please don't forget to turn the microphone on and then off at the end. Thank you.
Well, good evening, and thank you for allowing me to speak. My name's Malcolm Thompson. I live at number 43 Fraser Avenue, immediately next door to the proposed new build site, which I must say was not shown in the picture. It was the one with motorhome, and it wasn't very well indicated. My wife and I, together with my neighbour at number 47, will be most affected by this proposal. I'd like to start by saying that apart from the obvious noise and inconvenience that comes with any building project, we are generally in favour of modernisation of the property at number 45, as, if done correctly, it should enhance the neighbourhood. However, there are certain points that I would ask you to consider and explain why we have the objections to the proposal. The proposal is in an area of special local character as designated within the Hillingdon local plan. We do not think the proposal respects this special local character. The proposed development is unacceptable by reason of its overall size, height and siting in relation to the adjacent properties, and would result in an over-dominant and visually obtrusive form of development. there would be a significant increase in overshadowing and loss of sunlight, in particular to our property at number 43, which would be very deprived of afternoon and evening sunlight, particularly on our patio during the summer period. The rear of the building in particular protrudes and extends several metres beyond number 43, with a proposed side entrance to the kitchen in line with our opening patio doors and less than 2 metres away. Any kitchen extract system would therefore be discharging very close to our living room in a very unneighbourly and unacceptable way. The proposal results in a huge bulk of building at the rear, which is elevated compared with neighbouring properties due to the flood risk requirement for the building to be higher off the ground in the event of flooding. This makes the height and the overbearing nature of the development even greater. The proposal would establish the principle of being able to build very large two-storey extensions to properties in the road, which would completely alter the character of the area. The rear of these properties have a public face as they front the river and are visible from properties in Wren Drive. The property probably contains bats, just to mention it, a protected species, but no account or report has been made regarding this material consideration. The bats are also in our property and we see them each evening. Hillingdon's guidance states that where a 2 or more storey building abuts a property or its boundary, adequate distance should be maintained to overcome possible domination, generally 15 metres, with a habitable room windows not less than 21 metres. The proposal is much closer than this, of course, and our house wall is the boundary of a wall between us and the neighbouring property. The proposal is described in the planning report as being a 2-storey, 4-bedroom dwelling with habitable roof space. The 4 bedrooms shown are on the first floor, with a prayer room and music room in the roof space, or I'd call it a 3rd storey. In practice, it is a 6-bedroom house over 3 storeys, which is confirmed by the flood risk assessment document, which clearly states that the proposal, and I quote, is to replace an existing bungalow with a 6-bedroom residential dwelling. This, by any other name, is effectively an application for a 6-bedroom property on 3 floors, not a 4-bedroom property on 2 floors. The description of the application is misleading and inaccurate. There is no building of this size squeezed into such a restricted site anywhere on the Garden City estate, so allowing this would be a departure from the pattern of development that characterises the area of special characterises this area of special character. Incidentally, the flood report shows the River Colne at the bottom. It is in fact the River Fraser. It is noted that since the original plans were released, the unacceptable proposal for rear balconies has now been excluded. However, the depth of the proposed structure is still excessive, which surely does breach the required 45-degree line of vision from the rear of our property. It depends, of course, where the measurement of 45 degrees is taken from. It states in 708 of the planning that measurement is taken from the first floor windows of both adjacent properties. This does not appear to be an accurate statement, as the measurement appears to have been taken out from the centre towards the centre of our property. This makes a huge difference in the way it would impact our view and the loss of light to our property. The only way to address this is to make the property a little smaller and more in keeping with the other properties in the area. The conclusion, therefore, is that this proposal would constitute an unneighbourly form of development, contrary to policies BE 19, 20 and 21 of the adopted Hillingdon Unitary Development Plan. Is it appropriate to have a prayer room and a music room sited so high in a building that would clearly have to be ventilated by open Velux windows in the summer? The room is particularly being noise transmitting by its very nature, and perhaps prayers, if the religion demanded audible chanting, I don't know. We further object to the movement of the driveway entrance and the existing arrangement of a side-to-side driveway, and the proposal is to swap the driveway towards our property, meaning that it would potentially be more disturbing to us and will require a removal of the grass verge in an area that has only just been designated a residential parking area.
Sorry, I need to draw you to a halt.
Okay.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Almost finished anyway. But,
thank you.
and there are a couple of pictures which I can show if someone wishes to see such impact. But there we go. Thank you very much.
Please, colleagues may have a question of you, so please just check in case that they do. Does anybody have any questions or clarification at all? Sorry, having made you sit back down again, thank you very much. Invite you to return to your seat. Okay. The applicant, Mr. Parminder Kundra, or the agent, Mr. Kamal Panasar, wish to speak? Sorry, if you then could provide your details as you speak, that would be helpful. Thank you very much. Again, you have speaking rights of 5 minutes, 4 minutes with the green light, and 1 minute with the amber. If you could state first your name, though, please. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Bhupinder Kundra, and I'm here with my husband, Parminder. We welcome the officer's recommendation for approval, and we are here to respectfully request that our planning application be approved so that we can commence building our family home. We have, since 2014, submitted 2 pre-planning applications. It's been a very detailed and comprehensive process, and we've had a great deal of thought and consideration when we have been meeting with our architect in respect of designing our family home. It's really not something that we've rushed into at all. We've had a great deal of input from the planning officer, and we've greatly appreciated the assistance and guidance that we've received, and we believe that this is why we've now been given a recommendation for approval. I would just like to take this opportunity to point out that we are in fact only asking to increase the size of our property by 7%. So in essence, we're asking to seek approval to build on 12% of our entire plot. Of the 50 or so houses on the street, we note that 8 of the houses have signed the petition, and therefore we would just like to point out that we do have an overwhelming majority of 86% of the street that don't have a problem with the build. Focusing on the petition, we'd just like to say that we don't believe that our property is in the top 10% or the top 10 of the largest properties on the street. There is mention in the petition that it is out of character of the existing street scene, to which we'll say that one of the endearing qualities of Fraser Avenue is that it is a very unique street. There are no 2 houses on the street that are alike. On that basis, we suggest that our proposed home will add to the street scene, given that currently 45 Fraser Avenue, as it exists, is a very dilapidated bungalow. With that in mind, we have also pulled back the building line as requested by the planning officer. There is also mention of our house being too high, to which we have conducted a topographical survey. This has been commissioned, and the result of which has confirmed that our house will be no higher than any other house on the street. There's concern that there is an overdevelopment of the site, to which I will say again, we really are only asking to increase the size of our property by 7%, which is a total of 12% of the whole site. In respect of mentioned the loss of light and privacy to neighbours, we will say that we have met extensively with the council planners, and we have adhered to the Hillingdon Council's UDP, and it's on that basis that the planning officer has recommended approval. In respect of changing our home from a bungalow to a house, we do feel that it is a perfectly reasonable request, as a number of houses on the street were once bungalows. In respect of the concerns, one namely being that there was a rear balcony, we'd like to point out again that we have met extensively with Hillingdon planners, and on that basis we really have amended the plans during the course of the two and a half years. We appreciate the points that have been raised by our neighbours at number 43, and what we would like to say is that we do believe that our build adheres to the Hillingdon UDP. In respect of the flood risk assessments, we have been told that it does not at all contain any risk at all. We can confirm that there are no bats in the property. Hillingdon Council inspectors have visited the property. We haven't seen any bats, and neither have they. We do understand that change can be unsettling for people, but we feel that our family home is something positive for Fraser Avenue, and it's on that basis we request that you vote in favour of our application, and we do actually greatly look forward to living on the street and building good relations with our neighbours, and our young family of 3 children aged 5, 3 and 2, and my husband's elderly parents. and so I hope we can build good relations in the years to come. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, very well timed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, any questions at all? Councillor Yarra.
Just a simple question. Have you at any time during your decision making and what you wanted to do with the house discussed with any of the neighbours what your plans were?
If I can answer that. My name's Parminder Kundra. I did initially speak to one of the immediate neighbours on 47 Fraser Avenue, Carl Hart. I did explain to him, I said, what's going to happen is the architect's going to come and have a look at it, and we do plan to extend the property considerably, but I said it's in the architect's hands, they'll best advise us. It subsequently happened that the architect came back and said there would be no fruit in extending this property, you would have to knock it down and build something new. It would be better because it would be far more expensive to extend this property into something you would like. So on the advice of the architect, we decided to put a new build property in.
Thank you very much. Further questions at all? Okay, thank you very much. I invite you to return to your seats. I notice 2 ward councillors present. Do you wish to speak? Councillor Sweeting, thank you very much. Three minutes speaking time. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of local residents. I'm not only a councillor for West Drayton Ward, but also a resident of Fraser Avenue, and know both the petitioners and the applicant, as they are all my neighbours. I'm also secretary of the Garden City Estate Residents Association and a founder member, which has a policy of not speaking for or against specific applications in our area, unless there is a widespread consensus and interest on the issue. In the case of this application, I would ask the committee to consider thoroughly the many concerns of residents which they have not raised lightly. I appreciate that the old dwelling on the site breached the building line and therefore affected the amenities of the street scene and the neighbouring properties. The new property being set back is indeed more in keeping with the street scene, but it does indeed affect neighbouring properties, as the new build would bring the building much further back into the plot, which is quite narrow, as the plans say. By moving the property back into the site, it will give the appearance of a whole new house to the rear when viewed particularly by number 43. This would be a change to the character of the buildings at the rear and would set a precedent which I suggest the committee should consider as material. I suggest that the committee may like to look at pages 123 and particularly 124 of the agenda annex in order to see how far the building would indeed be set back, particularly in respect to number 43, and its size compared to 43 and 47, which are on wider plots. However, it is very much welcomed that we are seeing a replacement single-family dwelling built to 21st century standards to replace the existing building, which maintains the family housing character of this road. The building is considerably larger adjoining properties, having a capacity of 6 bedrooms, and it is important that the building of this size, while supported by the officer's representation, does not affect the street scene. I'm not a planning officer, and therefore I do not make any recommendations either way for this application, but only ask that all matters are fairly considered in respect to both the residents' concerns and the applicant's wishes. And no doubt, if the committee has any doubts regarding the effect on neighbouring properties, then a site visit might be an appropriate way forward. I think I needed to have the wisdom of Solomon when speaking on this application tonight, for both the applicant and the petitioners have very valid points to make. I thank the committee.
Thank you, Councillor. Any questions at all? Clarification? No, thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor Killam, do you wish to speak? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to clarify, I'm the only West Drayton councillor who doesn't live in Fraser Avenue, so my view is just as a ward councillor. I actually welcome the officer's report, and I would just want to state publicly that the applicant has, for numerous months, worked extensively with officers to overcome a lot of the concerns that we've heard from residents today. Right concerns as well, Chairman, because this is not only the premier street in the Garden City, it's the premier street in West Drayton, Chairman, and you all must be aware of that. And it's reflected in the size of the properties that it has. And that is also reflected, Chairman, in the bungalow, because the concerns, when you read the report, there were 3 concerns. The development was out of keeping with the street scene. Well, unfortunately, that's not true now, because it clearly, the bungalow that actually is out there is out of keeping with the street scene. As you can see, with the size of the bungalow compared to the properties around it, the new house would clearly be in keeping with the street scene. I know I've spoken with the applicant on numerous occasions. I can confirm this is a 4-bedroom property. The current bungalow is a 5-bedroom, as you'll see from your plans. So it's a family home with 4 bedrooms. And I couldn't agree more with what the residents said about a balcony. And I know when I engaged with the applicant, they have willingly removed that. And so we must welcome that, because that was a real concern of the overseeing of the 2 homes next door. And there's also about this 45-degree rule. And I know when I used to sit there and talk with officers about 45-degree rule, and had to up here to the 15-metre and 21-metre rule. Well, the 45-degree rule, as we've heard from Meg Harani, is not a consideration tonight. It doesn't come into consideration because it doesn't happen. But let me just say, regarding 47, there's no habitable rooms looking adjacent to 47, and all of them are obscure glass. So I just want to sum it up, because really, my Councillor Sweeting, who I never agree with, but I do tonight, this is a very contentious issue, because residents raise real concerns, but I do believe the applicant has overcome those concerns. This application now should be approved, and that's why the officers have approved it. I welcome this in the Premier Street in West Drayton, and I urge members to go with the recommendation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gillam. Questions at all, colleagues? No? Thank you very much. I invite you to return to your seat. Right. A number of issues have come out. Special local character, the impact on that. Overshadowing. Minor matter of the kitchen extract. Public facing the rear of the river, so the impact is more visible at the rear. Bats. Breaching of the 45-degree line. They are matters that I picked up that I believe we need to explore. I would like to add on to that an exploration around the inset dormers, the inverse dormers, and its design. It's not clear to me whether they are floor height windows that allow people to walk out into a sort of a area and then overlook a parapet of the roof. So I need to talk about that one. Other issues that we need to pick up, please come in. At this moment in time, though, I think we should be focused on the major issue, which is its presentation in terms of height, size, bulk on the special local character. We've heard comment about it being over 3 stories, and it clearly becomes over 3 stories, in my view, with the dormers visible at the front. It makes it more recognisable as such. The character of the street, I understand, being only of 2 stories to date, but no 2 houses alike. So there isn't a uniform character against which this one sticks out. So can I have some comments and views on the impact of the proposal against the area of special local character? Thank you. Everybody comfortable with it then? Councillor Dillon.
The only other one I would request is to investigate the 3rd floor, so the rooms.
What they're labelled for is just a matter of interest, I think, rather than the fact that the use can be changed quite easily. So it's whether or not they're habitable, and they clearly are. What I'm mindful of, though, is the issue of this being an area of special local character. We've heard in the petition that this is detrimental to that, and we've heard it also from the councillor. And I think that I need to gain from the committee a view on whether or not they believe this is harmful to the area's special local character or not. Councillor Dillon.
I know the road quite well, and from memory, they're all various sizes of properties, and they seem to be very big down there. So, judging from these plans, I don't think it's horrendously large. I mean, we would probably benefit from a site visit, but it doesn't look to be extremely large down the bottom of the road. There's some really big properties. But then equally there are smaller properties along the earlier part of the road. It's all different down there, so I don't think it's very big.
Thank you, that's helpful. Other views, Councillor Stead?
Thank you, Chairman. You mentioned a short while ago about a shadow check. Was that actually carried out, or how do we leave it?
We will come to that, if I may, but I really want to pick out whether or not people are comfortable or not comfortable with just the general design of this within the area of special local character. If I may, please.
In that case, then, we did hear percentage of property increase with this new property. One was saying it's only a small percentage. Two other people said it was extensive extensions and considerably larger. So, what's the officer's views about the percentage of increase, please?
I'll pass that across, if I may.
Thank you, Chairman. In terms of the percentage of increase, my guess is that the speaker was referring to the footprint and the increase in terms of it being 7% of the existing footprint. Clearly, it's in terms of the overall size of the building, it's larger than that because you've got additional floors. But the issue isn't really for members to consider is not whether there's a 10% increase or a 20% increase, but whether the size of the development that's being proposed is comfortable in the street and on this plot.
Thank you. Other views at all? Councillor Yarrow?
Well, I don't know the streets, and I don't know the street scene at all, but looking at the pictures, no, I don't think it makes a massive difference to the kind of houses that are actually in there. But clearly, perhaps a site visit would be welcome to look ourselves. I don't know the street, but looking at the pictures, I would say it's minor.
Thank you very much. Other views? Councillor Chandel?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would agree with councillors. From the pictures that we've seen, it's a whole mishmash of different buildings. There's no norm there. As, this is what it classifies. I mean, in terms of also the size, I mean, I know it's 180 square metres increase in floor space, which is a considerable amount. But would it look different here? I don't think so. It would fall out of place. But we've only seen sort of 3 or 4 properties from the pictures. So from what we've seen, I don't think so it will affect the scene at all.
Fine. We also have the officer's report that's telling us that it doesn't. But it is useful to get a feel around the room that by and large there is not an argument that's saying that this is out with the character of the area and detrimental to the special local character. So that is helpful. We'll pick up Councillor Stead's issue around overshadowing. And I think that we can tie that in with also the comment that this breaches the 45-degree line, and my own inability from the plans to clearly confirm that it does comply with the 45-degree line, in that the neighbouring properties' windows are not marked at the first floor. Can I pass that over to officers for comment, please?
Thank you, Chairman. The 45-degree angle is shown, very faint though it is, on pages 1, 2, 3 and on pages 1, 2, 4. The accuracy of the plans, we have to rely on the architects, and the 45-degree angle is taken from the midpoint of the nearest window on the adjoining properties. That is shown, and it's shown to comply. Unfortunately, we don't have photographs of the back of the properties, so we have to rely on the accuracy of the plans. If members felt that they wish to have this checked or wish to see for themselves, then that's a matter that they could consider. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, I'd just draw your attention to page 125 and the proposed southeast elevation. For me, what we're gauging is the distance to the centre of that one bit of window that's shown on number 43, and it's just not clear. It's not clear where the centre starts at all, and the plan itself, it doesn't show it. I think there needs to be some degree of certainty when we have some comment around it protruding so far back as to impact on the amenity of the next door. We need to be clear that it is within our policy. We have a statement from the officers that it is, but it's not apparent from the plan. So I think that is an issue that needs to be resolved before we can, in my view, properly determine this. But that doesn't mean to say we need to halt here, but I think we can press further on to explore whether there are other issues as well. With regards to overshadowing, recognising the extension extends also on the first floor, has any assessment been done of the shadowing impact on the neighbouring patio areas or rear of the property?
Not had an overshadowing diagram done on this.
It hasn't been done. Is there a view of whether or not it will be an issue in your experience?
Generally, the overshadowing issue is in terms of the depth of beyond the adjoining properties, and and the recommendations within the supplementary document are set out so that the depths that are recommended there are in compliance with the shadowing requirements. So this would not go beyond the depths that are recommended within the SPD on residential extension. So it wouldn't be 4 metres beyond the adjoining properties. Okay,
thank you. We've been told here that the expert opinion is that overshadowing is not going to be an issue on this because it's within policy. There's still just that issue of the 45 degree. We have bats were mentioned and denied. What is our position, please, with regards such a protected species?
So, if there were a situation where bats had been raised and not answered, then under case law, you would have to defer determination of the application until that had been clarified. You've actually heard evidence on both sides this evening. You've heard concern that bats are present, and then you've also heard that bats are not present and that an inspection has been undertaken. On the basis of what you've heard this evening, I'd be happy to recommend that you impose an informative to highlight to the applicant that any works for the demolition of the existing building would require a licence if any protected species were found, and that it would be a criminal offence to proceed if that licence was not obtained.
Thank you. Helpful. Colleagues, can we then just turn to the inverted dormers? It's not clear from me on the plans quite their form. It suggests from the roof plan that this may be effectively a walkout. The wording full height fixed glazing suggests it may be floor to ceiling. And my thoughts are then whether or not people have the ability to effectively walk out into what would be a small inset within the roof and look out over both the street scene and the rear. Do we have any clarification from our plans on that? Is that a possibility, or have I misinterpreted the plans?
The windows are designed, you will be able to come out into those areas, but they are inverted dormers in the same way as if you have balconies, which members might have approved on a new build where you have screening. So in essence, what's been built into the development or the built into the design is the screening already there, so that the overlooking issues into adjoining properties is addressed.
Okay, colleagues, so it seems as though you do have the ability to walk out and could stand against the raised part of the roof that it forms part of the invert dormer. My concern and worry is firstly about the possibility of overlooking directly down into property, immediately adjacent to the rears of the neighbouring properties. That is a concern for me, and I also believe that design feature to the front of the property is significantly out of character with the rest of the street. And I do believe, I form the view that is detrimental. However, there has been a general view that the size and bulk is not. So I wish to push that back out for consideration as well and discussion to see whether or not I'm supported in my opinion there. Councillor Dillon.
There are lots of elements to the plans where I think character comes into it, and some we probably meet, but this is one for me where I said previously that the building itself may not be, but this could be out of character with the street scene, as you suggested. Hence, just to push it again, I think a site visit would be appropriate.
Yeah, I understand. I'm not clear on how a site visit would determine whether or not a balcony to the front and to the rear, or these walk-out inverted dormers would help. I mean, I can visualise them now. I'm not sure that I'd need to stand in the street to be able to visualise, if I were a neighbour, seeing somebody up at that roof level, effectively immediately above me.
My point being, we don't know if there are other properties there with front dormers.
Fair point. That's a fair point. We need to check that one. Okay. We have then some issues that have not been resolved. The 45-degree line appears as though it is satisfied, but it is not 100% evidence to me, in that it is challenged by the petitioner. The plans are not emphatically clear, although we have heard in the respondent and in the officer's report that it's okay. With the issue of the bats can be dealt with by way of informative. We have the special local character in terms of size and bulk, not a great issue. However, some of the features of the property may be out of keeping. My concern with the invert dormers and the impact that has on residential amenity of the neighbours to the rear, and also to the street scene and character to the front. And the suggestion has been that we visit the site to clarify our thinking on that one. It's too easy sometimes to avoid difficult decisions by going for site visits, and I'm not suggesting we do that, but we do wish to minimise the number of site visits we have. Otherwise, there's a temptation to go to too many. On this occasion, though, it may be warranted. Before I ask for further comments, Mr. Cruciat wishes to come in.
Just, if I may add help on one point. So, the issue of the 45-degree line is the message that seems to be coming out is that there's a lack of suitable evidence before you to demonstrate that 45-degree line has been taken from the correct place. It would be within your gift to make a determination on the basis of the plans before you, but to delegate the matter to the head of planning to actually make sure that those things were clarified, so that your decision was, so that appropriate evidence was put forward to make sure your decision was made correctly after the committee. If it transpired after the committee that there was a problem with that 45-degree line, the application would automatically be referred back to you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so we're really down to the straightforward. Are there the features of this property that are in keeping or out of keeping with the street? And would those particular features at the third story, the third level, give fears to overlooking at the rear, loss of amenity and street scene impact? Councillor Yarrow.
I'm still a little unsure about these inverted dormers. Are we actually saying that you could open a window and physically walk out into the air and have a look down, or are they like the inverted dormers that were put in a building off Hersey's Road, where the windows were set back by 3 feet, so that when you looked out of the window, your sight line was in fact 2 gardens away rather than into the next door's garden? How are these going to work?
We need clarification from Mr. Hirani, but I got the impression that these were full-height walk-out patio door type windows within what would then be a roof area, so you could walk out into the open air. Can you please confirm that, Mr. Hirani?
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. If I can refer you to page 124 and the second floor plan, you'll see there the windows are set back behind what would be a platform, as it were, so you would be able to come out onto that area, but the actual windows are inset, back as Councillor Yarrow described.
Sorry, Chairman. So, on the same point, if you turn to page 125, the 2 drawings in the middle, which are also on your screen, may I have the pointer, please? So, unfortunately, they're quite faint because of the way we reproduce things, but you'll see a section at either end. So if you look at your plan spec, you might be able to see it a bit clearer because it is quite faint. So that shows you the section of where the, if you like, the front face of that platform would be in relation to the front face of the roof. So if you were to walk out of those doors, you would walk forward, but only so far as where you see the small line that comes up to meet the roof. Any platform is contained within the roof form, which is why we're referring to it as an inverted dormer. Thank you, Chair.
There are a number of lines, and some of them we need real clarification, but it appears to me that the line you're talking about is nearly some 2 metres away from the door, the double line, which gives quite a substantial platform to walk out on. We're not talking about a foot. We're talking about something quite substantial to be able to stand at the front and at the rear and look out within the street scene and over the rear gardens. And that is the feature I am concerned about. Councillor Dillon.
Thank you. Alex, would you be able to then, if you're on the road or say the neighbour opposite, would you be able to then see that person from on that balcony?
If you look at the drawing behind you on page 125, in effect there's an optical illusion. So if we look at the top drawings here, that is, where's the front elevation? That is a full height patio door size window, but you only see the top half of it because the roof's in front of it. So my view would be that somebody tall enough to be close to the top of a door, if they exited through that window, you would probably see their head above the parapet. The other thing you need to take into account, however, is where would those views be gained from. So if you were a pedestrian walking along the road, because of the angle looking up, that's going to restrict to some degree any sight you would have of somebody using that area. If you're in an elevated position in a neighbouring property looking across from a higher viewpoint, you might be able to see more.
Okay, quite forward issue. I don't know how that one is resolved by site visit because it doesn't exist. This is about putting ourselves in this situation, maybe, if necessary, with further technical drawings showing a typical person right up against the outside, the lowest, where the wall hits the roof, to see how far somebody extends above it. My view is that it's probably going to be at least, upper waist chest height, if not more, and there will be quite a clear view from the rear into rear gardens. I accept the point around the impact in terms of within the street of somebody looking in. My point is not so much that privacy issue to the front. It is more whether or not this is a feature of the area that is subject to a special local character, or whether this is bringing in a new feature that is detrimental to the area. come on guys, we've got to reach a view here. Kicking it down the road for a site visit is not going to help. What might help if we are uncertain on this, if you felt that I have an issue, is further clarification on it, because the plans are not particularly clear. We don't know how high it is. We don't know those things. We can ask for all of that to make a better decision.
I think I'd find it helpful if we could have some graphics to see what it's like walking out and looking over the balcony, if that could be done. It may not be possible.
That may or may not, but we can certainly have some clarity on the plans that are shown before us to give us some heights and measurements, of which we can then put our own common sense against about the extent to which somebody will be taking a view that wouldn't otherwise be afforded in a street of two-storey houses. Councillor Dillon.
Yeah, I've said it before, I'm quite happy with the bulk of the property, and I've got no problems with that, and I'm happy with the application in general, but I do have an issue with these two windows, and I'm not comfortable, and I couldn't base a decision on it, to be honest with you. So possibly we look at deferring it until we get some clarity on how these actually work, and some diagrams, please.
Okay. Let me sum up where I think we are at, and please shoot me down if I've got it wrong. We have looked at special local character, and in terms of size bulk, we're okay. In terms of overshadowing, our advice is this isn't going to be impact, it's within policy compliance. And notwithstanding the impact on special local character, even though there is a public-facing rear view, we've had assurance that the issue of bats can be dealt with by way of informatives. The issue of the 45-degree line can be dealt with by delegated authority of the head of planning. The only issue that I believe to be outstanding is the impact of the dormer design to the street scene, and particularly to the potential overlooking privacy issue to the rear of the other properties. And for that, we're looking to defer. The suggestion is we defer for clarity and measurements and any other assistance can give us that will enable us to take a view of the extent to which somebody can be seen from the front or overlook the street in a way that we might find unacceptable, and similarly from the rear, the extent to which somebody using that area would be able to overlook into the rear gardens of the neighbours, particularly closer to the properties. Further down the properties, for me, it becomes less of an issue. The closer we move to the properties, the more privacy, I believe, is almost expected. Hence why we have 45-degree lines, amongst other things, that help that, as well as light and outlook. Okay, so is that a fair summary of where we're at? Yeah. That's been proposed by Councillor Dillon. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ahmed Walana is seconded. Show of hands, please. Right.
I'd just like to come in when point, if I may.
The vote, I believe, was finalised. I think it's a show of hands, and everybody said yes on that. So we just want to clear it up, because I want to make sure that the applicant is completely clear on where we're standing, on what hurdle now needs to be addressed.
So I'd like to take this opportunity with the applicant here and residents here to be a little bit cheeky and get some guidance from the committee. What we're going to be obtaining, we expect following your decision, is further information and clarity on the balconies, but also I gave advice to the 45-degree line that could be dealt with outside the committee, but I think that if you're deferring for clarity, that should be done at this stage. Whenever we receive amended plans in application, it's discretionary upon us as officers whether we reconsult with neighbours or not. In this instance, I'm minded that we should do a 14-day reconsultation, because part of that clarity of the plans that you're requesting is the impact on neighbouring properties, either in terms of overlooking from the balconies or in terms of positioning of the 45. So I'm just making it clear now during the meeting that that would be our intended approach as officers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think that's a very prudent approach. We're drawing to attention something that may not previously been recognised. It wasn't immediately obvious to me. It's only on quite detailed consideration of the plans that became an issue to me. So further consultation is helpful. And I need to say also at this stage that because we're deferring, again, this is speaking rights. If you wish to speak at the next time we convene to consider these issues that are outstanding, you need a further petition to be able to speak. So new petitions are needed, okay? I hope we're clear. We've arrived at a decision, and this matter will be considered again in due course. Thank you very much. Okay, if we can please move now to agenda item 9, 544 Uxbridge Road, Hayes. Sorry, before we change, because you sat here, what one are you here for? We might be able to adjust our running order.
I do apologise.
Don't apologise.
It all happened very quickly that we suddenly realised that we needed to take photographs because we live at number 43. Our property was not shown. The only thing you saw was our motorhome on our drive. You didn't see our home.
Please, all of that will be further explored when we go back through. You haven't.
Is the photograph of my patio that shows the line.
I'd invite you, please, raise another petition and address us. That is the best way of dealing with it.
I'll give her an email address.
Hold on. We're also going to give you an email address so that you can consult with our planning team and make sure they are completely aware of the issues that you're raising. Okay.
My main comment was that they spoke to the neighbours.
We'll have an opportunity to do that. Okay. We'll have an opportunity now. Thank you. You're not out of order. I just didn't wish you to sit here all evening waiting for something. Thank you. Okay. Okay, let's move on to agenda item 9, please. Mr. Harani, if you could present. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll try and make my presentations fairly quick on the next few items. This is an application for a part change of use of a retail unit to a tattoo parlour. The property is in a primary shopping area, and if it was a whole unit, then your officers would be recommending a refusal as they had done previously in 2010. This is a fairly small part of the unit, which is an extension in itself to the original unit. It's the single-storey element that you see here, which is being proposed. It's this part here, and it doesn't involve the loss of the whole retail unit, and on that basis we think that it's acceptable. So if I just show you the photograph, it's this particular single-storey element that's the application site. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Turnbull.
I think we need a site visit for this one, wouldn't you?
Thank you for that one. Thank you for that one.
I can't see any problems with it. It's just a small size. I'd like to go with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stead, were you indicating? No, you were just holding your pen up. Okay, sorry. Councillor Dillon.
I hope it's not got blacked out windows, but this has got whited out.
Come on, guys, let's focus in. Either we're with it or against it, please.
Yes.
You're seconding?
Yeah.
Forward in, seconded. Show of hands, please, everybody. Thank you. That's agreed. Move on to the next one.
2 items in one go. One is for the ATM's new door and new post box, and the other one is the adverts associated with that. I'll just show you the plans. This is the existing elevations. This site is well within the Brunel University campus. It's not going to have any impact on the street, and that's the proposal. You'll have seen this if you walk down the high street. It's a typical Santander shopfront and shopfront sign. So we're recommending approval on both applications.
Thank you very much. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, move officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stead.
I second that, Chairman.
Show of hands, item 10 only. Thank you. And item 11.
Move officer's
Thank you very much.
recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Stead. Show of hands, please. Everybody, thank you very much. 12.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for a change of use to a HMO, 7-bed HMO. All of the bedrooms are doubles, and there is only one minor alteration to the frontage of the property. It's the insertion of a window in the front elevation. You'll see that we have the existing elevation. You'll see that this is a blank frontage at the moment, and if you go back, this shows the window that's being proposed. Other than that, no external alterations. The sizes of the rooms meet all of the requirements of the SPG on multiple occupation. The parking meets the requirement of the multiple occupation as well, so we're recommending approval.
Thank you very much. My only view is that I'm not against the principle of what's being put before us or even necessarily the officer's recommendation. It's whether or not we should be looking to limit the number of people who are unable to reside at the premise. It would fill me with dread to be attached to a 14 person occupancy if you've got 7 doubles or 6 doubles and a single, so you're 13 people. Councillor Chamdale.
Thank you, Chair. Just a little clarification from the officers. Page 62 regards the parking spaces, because they've got 4. I think that's adequate according to the rules, but we've got under the Highways Officers report, that proposal includes 10 habitable rooms, so a maximum of 5 spaces would be appropriate. That word appropriate, do we need for them to have 5 spaces, or? Because if they've got the space, well, why not mark it up 5 spaces and put that as a condition? If we don't need it, then I think that just confuses it a bit for me.
Yeah, good point for me. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, the standards require 1 space per 2 bedrooms. So in that case, what is the Highways Officer commenting, the 5 spaces would be appropriate, but and the plans only show 4, so we haven't really raised any objection to this. We'll have to look at the layout. I'm not sure if there is enough space. It seems to be wide enough, but I'll have to draw it up to find out if there is enough space to accommodate another one without blocking the access to the property.
So for clarity, for a 7-bed HMO, our standard would be 4 spaces, correct?
Yes.
The standard is one space per 2 habitable rooms, so that would include
right. Okay, there you go.
that would include the communal rooms as well.
Okay, so we have a flaw in that this doesn't presently meet with our standard, and the issue is also, I understand, that the road outside it doesn't lend itself to off-street parking. Am I correct on that one? Okay, so we then have before us a proposal that doesn't meet our standard. Somebody help us then. Thank you, Councillor Duncan.
Can this be amended to include the, required number of parking spaces, please? Yeah, that's well, yeah. I second what you say.
So we're saying they've got space there, so can we just put it in, say they've got to have this many spaces?
I heard from Syed Shah that it may not be able to accommodate 5.
Can it be deferred then to see if it can? Because that's the only way we're going to know, really, isn't it?
The only reason I'm raising concern is that obviously we've got to allow for not just, I can see there's a space there, but we've got to think about that parked vehicles are able to open their doors, and people are able to get in and out, and they're able to get in and out of the property as well.
You wish to say something or not?
I just wanted to highlight, the issue we have here is the use of the building. So if you look at that plan behind you on the block plan, you can all see that there's a lot of space on that frontage. However, the very nature of a HMO is that these people are not living together as a family. There's a degree of independence, that's the definition of a HMO. And therefore the provision that we apply as a council is that those spaces must be independently accessible. in the real world, it may be very possible to fit more cars onto that apron to the front of the building. But were you to do so, if that white space was filled in with cars, then those other spaces would be reliant on the owner of those cars to move them to get in and out. So when we're looking at how many cars we think we could use as part of the exercise of our planning function, we think that only 4 cars have been demonstrated thus far to fit onto that space, because there must be the ability for those spaces to be independently accessible.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Dillon?
Yeah.
And there have been no petitions against this?
Yeah, there have.
There.
Hayes Conservation Area comments on the parking, I think that's what it says in the report, which is why Councillor Campbell... Well, exactly, I mean, according to this plan, there is no vehicular access to number 9 anyway.
There is clearly vehicular access. Sorry, if I go to the photographs, that may illustrate it. It's there. So the access is from there.
Yes, communal access.
It's a communal access, so they have a right of access across there.
So this ordinance survey plan is wrong.
Yeah, site plan is not.
Yeah.
People, I think, where they're going to put the black plastic bags.
Guys, please, hold on. We're getting late. We need to use microphones. We have what appears to be a straightforward application for an HMO. That there's no great argument against it being an HMO. The issue is it doesn't comply with our parking standards. So,
well, I think we must resolve this issue, because otherwise you could have any place becoming an HMO, and if there's no parking or inadequate parking, they'll just say, well, look, you've allowed this. This is, this is acceptable to you. Isn't there any parking in Grange Road? Because it is a sort of little service road just to those properties, isn't it? I thought there was parking along Grange Road.
Mr. Shah, you commented earlier.
Yeah, I mean, along the service road, the difficulty we have is it is probably there's a bend there and there's no footway. It's a relatively narrow road, so in terms of on-street parking, I wouldn't want to encourage people to start parking on there. That could have other implications.
I think they do.
Yeah.
So, sorry, Chairman. Yeah, please. So we'll just clarify the position. So if you look at page 62, your Highways officer has looked at the proposals and on the basis of 7 rooms has no objection on the basis of the provision of 4 spaces. So 7 rooms, 4 spaces, the Highways officer thinks is acceptable. Well, what I think members are concerned about is if those 7 rooms are used intensively and you have a large number of people in the premises, then you might have a situation where those 4 spaces fail to meet the needs that the property is driving. So we can perhaps look to see whether there's a way of restricting the overall number of people in the property to meet with the concerns that you've raised.
Fantastic. Way forward. Councillor Dillon.
Would we need a bin store for 7 HMOs? And where would that be located, do you know? I can't see it on the map.
So the Highways officer in his comments has concluded that there's enough space within the apron to the front of the building to be able to accommodate the required cycle parking and bin store without preventing the provision of 4 independently accessible spaces. I don't know if we've got a condition. My colleague will check and tell me. But if we haven't already, we can add a condition so that the details of that are actually agreed up front.
Okay.
Or if I can clarify the bin store and cycle storage provision, condition 3 requires details to be submitted.
So whilst our standards regarding parking relate to habitable rooms, if we limit this to the 7 beds, which is what we'd approve, that is more than 1 parking space for 2. That only needs 3.5. We're giving them 4, so we meet that standard. If we then limit the number of people that are able to reside there through further condition, and then we absolutely protect ourselves against over-intensity and impact on amenity of neighbours, and also the additional parking. You're not agreeing with me, Councillor Duncan?
No, I think that's unenforceable. and you should not put on conditions that cannot be enforced. How are you going to enforce how many people are in there? We're not going to go round and do that, and nobody else is going to.
I think you can have a reasonable condition that prevents a number of people residing. And if we found that too many people were in there and registered through voters register, through any other credit checks, and it came back to that address, I think that would be an evidence that was an overuse. So I do think it is enforceable. Not easily, I accept. But otherwise, we're just saying fill the house with as many people as you like, effectively, and I have concern about that.
Well, I think if there are 10 habitable rooms, then they're going to be occupied. I mean, if this is an HMO, it's a business, and the person running it is going to want to maximise that business. And so I think the 10 habitable rooms will be occupied as fully as they can be, and all we need to do is just provide more space to serve that. Another parking space, it looks perfectly adequate on there. I mean, yes, they might be double parked, but people in this situation, this happens all over the borough in these places, that people in these situations know that they need to ask somebody in room 4 to move their car so that they can get out or something. I would rather they provided the parking on site.
My trouble there is then us requiring something that isn't actually policy compliant. That we are talking about independently accessible parking spaces. And you know, to move away from it and then require somebody to do something that's not within our policies, it sits uncomfortably with me.
But this isn't policy compliant at the moment, is it?
My understanding, sorry.
If I may, just one point to clarify before I move on to the parking element, just because, for the record, the highway officer is not suggesting that you can accommodate cycle parking and bin refuse at the front. What he's saying is that you could condition that. So cycle parking can go to the rear of the property. There is no space, I can't see, the cycle parking will be at the front, and it won't be, people will not be using that because it won't be secure parking at the front. Refuse, I don't think a large refuse he's talking about, he's probably talking about some bins, which there is space to put in at the front. Coming to the car parking, the difficulty we have is, as a HMO, we need independently accessible parking spaces. If we are going down the line of having parking spaces which are not independently accessible, then the same principle aren't we setting a precedent for flats as well? The same principle could apply. That is something, in my opinion, I think would be difficult. It's not something I've ever come across with. In terms of the layout, I personally think that it would be difficult to add an additional space to the front. It is providing 4 spaces. What you then are left with is it is 1 space short, but then in terms of national planning policy framework, the test is that it's only acceptable unacceptable in transport terms if it has a severe transport impact, and in that case I think we'll struggle to justify that on the basis of shortfall of 1 space. So hence why the highways officer has come to a view of no objection on this in this case.
Okay, we need to unpick this. One of the avenues that's being proposed has largely been closed off to us there. I don't think that us requiring non-independent accessible parking is a helpful move. And so I think we need to accept the plans before us and either go with them or go against them. And if we go with them, whether or not we need additional conditions to prevent any concerns that we may have. And if we have no concerns, we can just move forward. Councillor Dunn.
I'm kind of in favour of putting a number on it, on the number of people, because I don't believe the number 11 and number 7 actually know this is going to be a HMO with possibly 12 people living in it, 14 people living in it, and so I would put a number on it, and then as soon as they find out that there's 16 people in there, they'll voice their opinion, report it, and we can do something about it.
I agree. We can do what we can to protect the amenity of neighbours, and that is what I suggest. We can do no more than is reasonably practicable. So Is somebody going to help us here then? With an additional condition limiting the number to seven to reside at in one time. Ms. Cruciate, you're going to come in now.
If I can, condition number 5 restricts the number of bedrooms to be let. What I think members are suggesting is that there's a restriction on the number of people that occupy this. So you need to specify what you think is the correct number in terms of that condition. So we can amend that condition to restrict the number of bedrooms to be let plus the number of people to occupy or reside at these premises. There are 4 parking spaces. Members may wish to base the number of people that occupy these premises on the number of parking spaces that are available and the council's standards of 1 per 2 habitable rooms.
Councillor Dillon.
I'm tempted to limit it to 7.
That's fine. There's no reason. We can't just amend this and instead of limiting the number of bedrooms, limiting the number of people residing. Or, if you wish to boot and braces, 7 bedrooms and no more than 7 people. Do the both. And it may be easier to enforce it that way, because you can inspect the number of beds.
It will be easier to enforce.
Okay. Proposal then. Is that a proposal? Subject to
a
amending
condition which is 7 bedrooms and 7 people.
Thank you, presiding. Thank you very much. Seconded by Councillor East. Good old Spaghetti Western. Show of hands, please. That's everybody. Thank you. Mm. 39 Station Road.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for a change of use to a mixed use of takeaway and a cafe or restaurant use. You'll note from the history section that permission was granted back in 2013 and wasn't implemented, so it has expired. There has been a change in circumstance, slight change in circumstance since that permission was granted, in that the adjoining property at number 2 here has been granted or has been converted to residential use. It was previously an office use, and so we need to take that into account. However, the habitable room windows to that property are all to the front and to the access to the side. There are no windows on the ground floor level which would be impacted on. There's clearly going to be activity to the rear yard, but that's a situation which is current with the retail use, and there are no restrictions on the hours of use currently that the retail use can operate. So in this particular case, we're gaining that element of it by restricting the hours of use. So with those conditions and with the restrictions that are being placed, we'd recommend approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Dunn.
Move officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much. Seconded by Councillor Yarrow. Show of hands, please. That's everybody. Thank you. We're now moving into part 2. And the link has been broken? It broke itself.
If I can ask them not to use microphones for part 2, but to ensure that it's not broadcast.
Okay.
Until I can put the link, and I'll let you know as soon as that's done.
I'd prefer if you check that it's down before we start. Thank you.